right, good morning. Welcome to the Empowerment Table with Lakeisha Lingard. All right, I'm so glad to be back with you all this week for another episode of Tea and Tools. And so, as you all come and sit at the empowerment table, I'll give you a few minutes if you want to go grab a drink. I'm still on my hibiscus tea, so this is what I'm drinking this morning. But I'm going to take a few minutes to share this live before we get started. But you all can come on in, say good morning. I would love to see who is at the table with us this morning. Yes, let me also double check some settings just to make sure that there aren't any mishaps this week. I am pretty new. I'm not that new to social media and various platforms, but sometimes I can mess up because I'm not a professional at it. But I'm gonna go ahead and share this live, tag someone who you believe may benefit from this. Today we're going to be talking about attachment. So I'm going to be doing some dual monitoring. So you may see my eyes switch from one monitor to the next. But today's topic is regarding attachment. I know this is I believe that it is something that would be very helpful for us as individuals to understand our attachment style. And because I do know that it will shed light, give you insight into experiences, even giving you insight and shedding light into like some of your responses, the way you may respond, and you've been trying to figure out, well, why do I respond that way and why does this happen? But let me take a minute. I am still trying to share this. Share it, tag someone who you believe would benefit from being at the table this morning. Really helpful conversation will be happening. I won't be before you all very long, but I definitely want to be able to share some information that I believe would be helpful. All right, I'm sharing now. All right. And as always, I do want to give a disclaimer. This information, the information I'm sharing, it is in no way intended to substitute for mental health, individual mental health services. So it's just a way in which I'm going to be sharing some strategies, some helpful practical strategies, things to help us improve our relationships, things to help us better manage our emotions, and also things to help us just feel as if we are living the life that we want to live. And so on my Facebook page, I've also put a link there to my new YouTube channel where all of these videos will be uploaded. And so go on that channel, my YouTube channel, Empowering for Purpose LLC, and like the page, follow the page, subscribe to it, whatever the jargon is for the page. And so I would very much appreciate it, so that I have to reach, with this page being a brand new page, I need at least 50 people to subscribe to the channel, and then I'll also be able to go live from there. I'm also thinking about attaching my Instagram page to this feed so that this conversation can be live on Instagram. But that's something that I'll try to do for the next conversation on next week. And so, again, we're at the empowerment table this morning. And the main objective for today is really to help us understand attachment. And I hope that through the discussion today, you all will know that attachment, although it forms early in childhood, primarily because of our relationships with our parents or whoever our earliest caregivers are. Understanding your attachment is really not about blaming parents. It's also not about labeling yourself, but it's really about recognizing relationship patterns that we've developed and then discovering that those patterns can change. So the takeaway for today is just to understand that your blueprint, this is your blueprint to how you've learned what you've learned to believe and think about relationships. And if you understand your blueprint, you can begin building something healthier. So that is the purpose of it. And I'm so glad to see, I already see Sabrina Moore in the comments. She said recognition. Exactly. Everything that I do on this platform, at this table, this empowerment table, it is to help us recognize, right? Because we have to be able to recognize the behavior that we want to target and change. So it is definitely about recognition. And as we begin to start this conversation off, I want you to just engage with me in the chat if you're in a place where you can engage. When you hear the word relationship, what's the first word that comes to mind for you? Is it safe, hard, trust, peace, fear, love, complicated? Some of us may view our relationships as complicated. And so just share in the chat. I'm so interested in seeing what you all share. If I can't read all the comments now, I always go back later and read your comments. But know that at the empowerment table, I want you to feel safe. Check in with yourself. No pressure to disclose or share information. But if you feel safe enough and comfortable to do that, definitely share, because your sharing encourages someone else. So I do encourage sharing, but I don't pressure sharing. I want you all to check in with yourself, take care of yourself, know where you are in this moment. You may just be here just to listen. And if listening is all that you are, you feel safe enough to do, then just do that. And so I see Sabrina Moore. When she hears the word relationship, she thinks building. Good response. Exactly. We have, because it does require us to build. And we have to be in a place where we can build each other. We're not responsible for the other person's building. Of course, that initial responsibility lies with them, but two people in relationships, no matter what the relationship is, if it's a friendship, if it's romantic, if it's with family, parent child sibling relationship, whatever it is, it does require us to build. And so I do like that comment. I think when I hear of the word relationship, I hear of safety, not from the standpoint of feeling safe, although there are relationships where I definitely feel safe in. But when I say safety, I think about from the aspect of us being able to create safety for each other. I'm not responsible for you, but I can do my part in trying to build a safe environment for you in this relationship. And so whatever it is, it again, it speaks to those early things that we learned about relationships. And so that's what we're talking about. Sabrina said that's the other word that she was going to put. See, we have to help each other to feel safe in relationships. We can't expect or want someone to talk to us and share with us if we're not willing to do our part and in making the environment safe for sharing. And so all people involved in the relationship bear that responsibility. And so, be ready for it because it is doable. And again, like Sabrina Moore said, we can look back at things and help us to recognize the behaviors that we want to target and that we want to change. A simple definition for attachment is the emotional bond that we develop with our caregivers that teaches us how relationships work. So before you learn math, before you learn to read, some of the things you first learn: can I trust people? Will someone comfort me when I need it? Is it okay to need someone else? Am I worthy of love? So those are the lessons that becomes our relationship blueprint. And so again, attachment, the emotional bond we develop with our caregivers that teaches us how relationships work. What did your early caregivers teach you about relationships? And again, I have to state this because it is not about blame. We're not here to blame parents and say, if my mama hadn't done this or my daddy hadn't done that, I wouldn't be struggling in this way. It's not about blame, right? It's about recognition so that we can target the behavior. And again, it's not about labeling yourself as we go through this conversation today. I see Lillian Anderson, Danzy Anderson on. Thank you for being on. Thank you for your comment. Amen. So we want to know those first relationships again. I'll repeat that again. It teaches you things such as, can I trust people? Will someone comfort me? Is it okay to need others? And am I worthy of love? And so keep in mind, those are just like a few of the things that it teaches us. As you look back over your relationships with your parents or your early caregivers, you may be able to identify something else that it taught you. I can remember working with someone and she said, what she taught was that she can't depend on anyone. What she learned, I'm sorry, is that she couldn't depend on anyone. It wasn't safe to meet other people. And so she went into her friendships that way. She was friendly, but she kept her friends at a distance. Even in romantic relationships, she would only let that romantic partner get but so close to her, enough to where it didn't push her out of her comfort zone. And so that's the importance. So when she was able to recognize that, at times when she saw herself putting her friends at a distance, and I'll talk to my friend, I'll share with my friend, but when I begin to share too much or what felt like too much, right, she became uncomfortable and then she started pulling back. I remember early on, when I was really young, I was in my 20s, and I first started to recognize this in myself. I remember having a person that I had grown extremely close to in the workplace. And so I would talk to this friend and we would share things. And one day I just noticed the moment where my guard was dropped. I had shared like a lot of things with this person, and I noticed I can remember now the exact moment my mind began to say, "Uh-oh," and then I started to pull back. So much so that this friend, she came to me and she said, did I do anything wrong? She said, all of a sudden, you just kind of pulled back from me. And so I really had to work on that and know that, okay, I learned that maybe it wasn't too good to meet people. And let me be specific too. I think in my family, it was hard to meet people outside of family, right? Because my mom was very supportive. My dad was he took care of us, but the way they moved in relationships was like, it's just us. And so that was something that I really had to push past from those early experiences with seeing how my parents, right, even responded in their outside relationships. And so I want to give a practical example too of when we look at this development very early in life. So imagine a baby crying. There would be one caregiver who consistently picks up the baby, comforts them, and meet their needs. Another caregiver sometimes responds, sometimes ignores them, sometimes becomes angry. So keep this in mind, that baby didn't choose those experiences, but their brain began developing and making conclusions. And so one brain may learn, people help me. And then the other one may learn, I have to figure it out myself. And so those beliefs, you have to recognize that those beliefs don't disappear when we become adults. What happens, we carry them into adulthood. And so, again, that's why recognizing what those beliefs are and challenging them is so important and just the main part of this conversation today. Another chat engagement, growing up, I felt consistent, conditional, warm, confusing, distant, unpredictable. If you feel comfortable sharing, drop a word in the chat. Love felt what? There's no explanation required. You're just sharing, if you're comfortable doing so, how love felt to you. Love with my love from my mother, it felt consistent, but it also felt, let me see if I can find the right word. I consistently knew she loved me, but it was with some emotional distance. She would come to me, she would meet my needs, those practical needs. I was fed, I was bathed, my hair was combed, I was clothed, I was changed. But because I grew up in a family where my parents had 10 kids together, so, and I'm number 9. So by the time mama got to number 9, she was probably just burned out, right? And so sometimes it felt as if she did it, but then she was busy because there was another child there and another child there and another child there. And so sometimes I didn't always get the emotional part of it early in life. Now, as we begin to grow and become more independent and taking some of that load off of her, we begin to form that emotional connection. But sometimes very early on, when I was young, she taught us, she talked to us, she gave us those lessons, but sometimes it came with a little emotional distance, again, because I grew up in a big family. And so, again, like I said earlier, it's not about blaming her, because there were some wonderful things that she did. I'll never stop seeing her as the best mother in the world. But some of those lessons and taking care of me came with some emotional distance at times, because she was busy being mom. She was busy being the wife. She was busy being the homemaker. And so share what love felt like for you if you feel comfortable. I see Yolanda said it felt conditional. Lillian, it felt distant. Sabrina, complicated. Yeah, all of those are true and valid, and so the thing is not about minimizing our experiences, it's about understanding them. So now, because it felt those ways, you have to be able to say to yourself, again, this recognition, because it felt complicated, conditional, whatever it is, I started to respond this way very early on, and I continued that. I see Lillian, exhaustion for me happened with my family as a mother. Yeah, exactly. And what we have to realize too is that we get our parents at seasons, right? The season I had my mom in, being number 9, the 9th child, was probably very different from the experience of the first child or the second child. So again, that's why it's not about blame. It's about understanding that We had them in certain seasons of our life. Some of us had our parents in a season of divorce, in singleness. And so whatever that meant to, and whatever that did to the attachment that was formed. Your relationship blueprint. Again, think about attachment style like the blueprint of a house. So the blueprint is not the house itself, right? But it simply guides how the house is built. So likewise, your attachment style, it isn't your personality. We do that to ourselves. We label ourselves. We make it a part of our personality, or, oh, that's just how I am. I've always been that way. But it's really just the pattern that your brain learned. So see it, if you can keep kind of make that separation between, is not my personality, but it's a pattern that my brain learned, then you also see that pattern as something that can be changed, something that can be improved upon, something that can be adjusted. But when you see it as like a fixed part of who you are, that can take away the room for change. So we want to be able to see it in that way. Another practical example. Imagine someone you care about doesn't respond to your text for 6 hours. So I'm going to use this practical example from the standpoint of 3 different people. 3 different people may tell themselves completely different stories. Person 1, they're probably busy. Person 2, they're upset with me. Person 3, I don't care. I don't need anybody anyway. So you see how it's the same situation, but a different blueprint. And so that's what understanding attachment will do for you, help you to see what your blueprint is. And so the thing I want you to take away right now is life events, don't always determine your reaction. The meaning we attach to those events does. So it's not the event, it's oftentimes the meanings that we attach to the event. So be aware of the meaning. Be aware of the meaning that is influenced by your blueprint, your relationship blueprint. And so in this next section, I want us to go over, I want to share with you 4 attachment styles. So you may recognize yourself in more than one style, but just keep in mind, the main thing is this is not a diagnosis, it's simply awareness. And so first I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about secure attachment. This is where we all hope to be. This is all where we all should be striving to be on a more consistent basis. You may see yourself being able to be securely attached in some relationships, but in others is not so easy for whatever the various reasons are. That is not as easy to operate from this secure place. And so that's what we want to talk about. Someone with the secure attachment, or I believe that a lot of us, we do have moments when we are in our secure attachment. So I'll say it from that way. When you're operating from secure attachment, the core belief behind that is, I'm worthy of love and people can generally be trusted. So when you're operating there, you believe that you're worthy and that generally people can be trusted. Not all the time, but generally, most of the time people can be trusted. And so let me give you an example of what this looks like. A friend has to cancel dinner. Instead of assuming rejection, you simply reschedule. You don't spend the evening wondering what went wrong. That's secure attachment, right? I'm worthy of love. People can be trusted. I can trust that my friend was just busy. I don't have to spend hours after we canceled just kind of wondering what happened and just mulling over it in our head. So that's secure attachment. Anxious attachment. I'm sorry, and I've gotten ahead of myself. I do have a PowerPoint presentation for us to kind of follow along, because I understand that sometimes that can help us with if you are a note taker. So Let me see if I can get on track with where I should have been in this PowerPoint presentation. So forgive me for that, but I just kind of got ahead of myself with this good information. And so let's see. The blueprint, we talked about it being a blueprint, the attachment styles. Okay, so we're talking about secure attachment now. And all right, so we're talking about secure attachment. So they reschedule, they cancel, and we just simply reschedule. So now let's talk about what that looks like from someone who's anxiously attached. So first style is secure, second style is anxious. And that's what we're talking about now. And so if you sometimes see yourself as being anxiously attached, the core belief underneath that is, I might lose people I love. And so the example, someone says, we need to talk later. All right. They come up to you, friend, wife, husband, girlfriend, mom, dad, whoever. I need to talk to you later. For the boss, it can be co-worker, pastor, a fellow church member. So they tell you we need to talk later. For the rest of the day, this person who's anxiously attached, their stomach can be in knots. They can be replaying that conversation, trying to figure out if they could recognize any clues about what's going on. And by the time they meet, what they have sometimes imagined is 10 times worse than what's actually going on. So that's someone who is anxiously attached. And we want to be able to recognize that type of attachment style. And so again, it's recognition in order for us to make changes. Next attachment style is this is when we are avoidant. So the core belief when we are in an avoidant state, if I depend on people, I'll get hurt. So that's one of the primary thoughts when someone is avoidant. Hold on for 1 second. Let me change over devices. I'm trying to make sure I can kind of keep up with you all's comments because I love seeing the comments. But if I can't, again, I always go back and look at them later. I love seeing the engagement. And so someone who is avoiding, again, that person might believe that if they depend on someone, they'll get hurt. So an example would be a co-worker offers to help with the project. So instead of this person accepting, they may just stay late, do everything by themselves because asking for help feels uncomfortable. So that's the avoidant person. I want to avoid this discomfort. Asking for help makes me uncomfortable. So I'll just kind of do it myself so I don't have to feel that emotion. And then the last one is disorganized. And so disorganized is often called or also referred to as anxious attachment because it's that complicated combination of both. And so the disorganized person is saying, I want closeness, but closeness doesn't feel safe. And so you see how that can be very contradictory, right? I want it, but I'm afraid of it. I'm going to reach out for it, but I'm going to back up when it comes. And so that is that. You pray, in the example, you pray for a healthy relationship. Someone kind enters your life. As soon as they become emotionally available, you begin backing away because the vulnerability feels uncomfortable. And so that's the disorganized or anxiously attached person. Which style fits you if you're comfortable sharing? I see Sabrina shared that she is anxious attached. So again, it's anxious. Let me move back the PowerPoint just for a minute. Secure. So we know that we can all be in our secure places, or the hope is, but I want this focus to kind of be on when we're not in that secure place. Excuse me. So are we anxious, avoidant, or disorganized. And I would say I was probably, no, not probably, I know. I was disorganized. Again, that example I gave with that coworker, I wanted the closeness, but when it felt uncomfortable, I'm out of here. And so again, I think that goes back even to examples growing up. My mom was there. I wanted the closeness. I sought the closeness, but then closeness became uncomfortable because sometimes that emotional part wasn't available. I wanted it, and I wanted it because I got it at sometimes I got it, but it wasn't consistent because mom was busy. So I wanted it, but then when I got it, it felt uncomfortable. So the older I got, the more I learned to not back away. I see Yolanda say she's avoidant. Dejanay says she's avoidant. And so it's, yeah. So Lillian says she's anxious and avoidant. So she's like me, that disorganized kind. Right. And so again, recognizing our type, not for diagnoses, but for information, because these are the things that you got to target in these relationships. You got to be able to say, and you got to be able to know, right? Like, when I'm anxious, this is what it looks like. When I'm avoidant, this is what it looks like. When I'm disorganized, this is what it looks like. For me, when I'm disorganized, I get close, but I pull back. I'll talk. I used to develop friendships. And when they became uncomfortable because of that vulnerability, I start pulling back from people. I can remember just having a hard time accepting the word best friend. I was like, man, that's a big title. I'm just being honest. It wasn't until adulthood that I used that title as a best friend. I can't remember in high school using the title best friend. I can't remember. And when you're in elementary, middle, and high school, some people, especially these days, everybody your best friend. And so it wasn't until adulthood, because it was, I want it, but can I trust it? Will it be consistent? Will they go away because they're busy? My mom was busy. And so again, that's the message that I received from those interactions. So another type engagement, you already shared, well, we've already done that part. Without overthinking, you shared what style that you feel like you fall in. And so where do these patterns show up? It's not just in romantic relationships. It shows up everywhere. It shows up in your friendships. Do you always initiate conversations because you're afraid that people will forget about you? That's one way it can show up in a friendship. And family, do you avoid conversations because conflict makes you uncomfortable? In the workplace, do you overwork yourself because your value feels connected to performance, and asking for help or assistance, right, felt uncomfortable? And so let's even give an example in church. Do you hesitate to join small groups because trusting new people feels risky? This is those practical ways that it shows up. Parenting. Do you struggle when your child needs reassurance because emotional closeness feels unfamiliar? And so again, it shows up in every part. And just take a moment to reflect. I often feel most secure when, what makes you feel most insecure? I think for me, like, vulnerability was a big issue. Just being vulnerable, I can feel very insecure. But I do want to move on to let you all know that this is just a great reminder. They're learned, right? These attachment styles were learned. So that means the story can change. The story isn't over, because the attachment style can change. Keep that in mind. Imagine someone who grew up believing I have to handle everything alone. Years later, they develop one healthy friendship. That friend will listen. That friend keeps their word. That friend shows up consistently. Guess what happens? Slowly over time, the nervous system begins to learn something new, that maybe people can be trusted, right? And so healing takes place one healthy relationship at a time, one safe, healthy relationship at a time. And so keep in mind, right? We're not talking about being in relationships that are not safe, because if it's not safe, you don't need to gaslight yourself or allow anyone else to gaslight you. If it's not safe, it's not safe, it's not safe, it's not safe. And you got to determine what's going to be your next step. But when you get the opportunity to experience a healthy relationship, you are, that new healthy relationship is teaching your nervous system something different. And that something different is a good thing. It's a wonderful thing. It's a part of the healing. So now I can be more vulnerable than I was in the past, because this friendship here taught me that. Because remember, secure means we believe that generally people can be trusted. So we see ourselves going back to that secure core belief. I'm worthy of love, and generally people can be trusted. And so that's what we are. That's the good thing about those healthy relationships that we engage in. And again, when those relationships are healthy, we have to always be on the lookout, right, for our insecure attachment ways. For if we're anxious, if we are avoiding, if we're disorganized, we have to be able to recognize if they're showing up. I see some comments. Lillian, anxious and avoidant. And Yolanda, vulnerability. All right. And then Lillian, feeling abandoned. And so you all are not alone in that. You are not alone. And so I really do thank you for sharing your comments, because it shows someone else, wow, vulnerability it was hard for you too. I could never imagine the way you are vulnerable with people today. And so that's the thing that I want. I want people to be able to look at me and say, okay, wow, if you have made those changes and you have moved more towards secure attachment, then so can I. It is really just a process that we have to get in it and stick in it, and we can't abandon the process. So don't abandon your process from moving from insecure to secure. And as always, I want to leave you all with a tool, the pause method. This method works for a lot of different things, but today we're applying it to the attachment, insecure attachment. So this is the tool for today. Take a screenshot of this slide if you want to keep this in mind. The pause tool. So the next time you notice some strong emotional reaction, P, pause. Don't react immediately. A, acknowledge, what am I feeling? Not what did they do, right? Because if you look at what they're doing, you miss the opportunity to go deep and get the recognition, get the awareness into your behavior that is needed, your response that is needed. So you ask yourself, what am I feeling? Not what did they do? Understand, U is for understand. What story am I telling myself? I'm telling myself that people can't be trusted. I'm telling myself that people will leave you. I'm telling myself that I have to do it on my own. I'm telling myself that I'm not worthy of this. I'm telling myself that this doesn't feel safe. So you have to be able to recognize what story you're telling yourself. S is for seek. Seek, and you can ask yourself, what would a secure response look like? When you pause, I'm going to pause. I'm going to acknowledge. I'm going to understand. I'm going to ask myself what would a secure response look like? And then E, engage. Engage intentionally. Don't engage emotionally. And so you have to be able to engage intentionally. A practical example, a friend doesn't return your call. Your old response is they must be upset, or I don't care, I don't need them anyway, or they must be hanging out with somebody that they like better than me, or I knew they weren't real. That's the old response, right? When we're in one of our insecurely attached ways. But a secure response would be, I don't have enough information to assume that. I'll give them time, check in tomorrow. Again, this is not about gaslighting ourselves. If you got enough information, then you already done missed the mark on this is a relationship that maybe you need to be reevaluating anyway. And so again, if it's a thing, deal with the thing. But in those cases where it's not, you have to remind yourself, I don't have enough information to make that type of assumption. I'll check in. I'll give them time, or whatever the response is. And so I hope that this information, helped you all. And just to, again, learn about your attachment style, and then learn ways, that pause method that you can use to help you be more intentional towards responding in a more securely attached way. And so I want you to share with me this morning before we end. What do you feel like you learned today? Did you learn hope, awareness, healing? Did you learn about patterns? Did you get some understanding? Did you learn grace? Because a part of this is having grace for yourself, grace for the other people, grace for those early caregivers. So what did you learn today? I think for me, it's hope. It gives me hope. It gives me hope that we can continue to work in a way that builds healthier relationships. And so keep in mind, your attachment style explains some of your relationship patterns, right? But it doesn't define your future. Remember that healing is possible. Every secure choice you make is another step towards becoming the person that you were created to be. And so I hope this information helped you all. And I want you to stay tuned, because this is part 1 of 4 regarding attachment styles, understanding our relationships. And so part 2 is going to be titled Why We React the Way We Do. We're going to be dealing specifically with triggers. And so next time, with that, we're going to be exploring why your body reacts before your mind, the connection between attachment and your nervous system, how triggers develop, and again, practical ways to regulate emotions instead of being controlled by them. So I thank you all for joining me at the empowerment table today as we are discussing relationships, understanding the relationships and how we respond. Join me next Tuesday back here again at 11 a.m. Again, go to my YouTube channel. I put a link on my YouTube channel on this Facebook page. Go to my YouTube channel, like and subscribe. I want to meet that 50 subscriber mark in order to be able to go live there. And so go to my YouTube channel, Empowering for Purpose LLC. I hope this information helps someone. Thank you all for joining me for Tea and Tools. I'll finish my tea now. And so I thank you. Yolanda, I learned trauma can cause old patterns to resurface. I'm reminded that I can reset. That's true. It's all about getting information to help us reset. Thank you for sharing that, Yolanda. And so thank you all for joining me here again at the Empowerment Table. I will see you next Tuesday at 11 a.m. The same place, same time, with another topic, part 2, Triggered, Why We React the Way We Do. So thank you all for joining me this morning, and enjoy the rest of your day.